Hi everyone! In this video I'll show you block number 9 in our Jelly Roll Block of the Month challenge. This block is called Up From Here. I love this block. I think it's super fun. If you'd like to participate and you're not already, you can check the description right under this video. You'll find a link to my Stitch It with Cricut Facebook group, and that's where you'll find everything you need to join in. And here we are, ready to assemble our block. I think it's a really cute one. I hope you're going to enjoy it. So, as always, I've included a PDF file in our Facebook group so that if you find it easier to use a printout rather than follow along with a video, you'll have the tools you need in the group files. So, these are the cuts you're going to use, and I wanted to mention that as we're getting closer to the end of the year, you probably have a lot of small leftover pieces. So this is a really good block to use those up. So you have 4 colors that you're going to need. You need 2 darks, and you want them to be different. This is going to help the pattern to stand out when you assemble it. So you want your 2 darks to be different. I'll call this dark number 1. You're going to have 3 cuts of 2.5 by 4.5 and 1 2.5 square. And they're all 2.5 because we are using Jelly Roll. On dark number 2, you have a 4.5 and a 2.5 square. You need a medium color, something that contrasts with those, so your pattern will stand out. If you're using all strips that are similar, you won't really see the pattern pop in your block. You want to try and find contrasting colors in your strip set. So we have in medium 2 at 4.5 and 2 at 2.5 square. And then the light color or white color is the most pieces. You have 2 at 8.5, 2 at 6.5, 2 at 4.5, and finally 2 at 2.5. So those are the most pieces. So let's just move this aside and we'll start laying out our block. Medium and the white. So we're going to start with a 4.5 dark and an 8.5. I'll say white because I'm using white, but it's your lightest color, your 8.5. So on our next vertical row, we're going to use a 2.5 dark. See, you see already how you're getting that point. We're going to use a 4.5 medium and a 6.5 white. And this looks like it's longer, but once you attach your seams, it will measure up. On our next row, we're going to use a 2.5 white, a 2.5 medium, a 4.5 from dark number 2. You have only 2 pieces. The 4.5 from dark number 2. And then a 4.5 white. So you can see how these arrow points are coming together. A 4.5 white, the other 2.5 from dark number 2, a 4.5 medium, and a 2.5 white. As you're laying it out, you're seeing this angle that's perfectly normal. It will all measure up as you assemble your seams. So then we're going to do a 6.5 white, 2.5 medium, and a 4.5 dark. And finally the 8.5 white and the 4.5 dark. And that's how we're going to lay it out, so we get the arrows and thus the name of the quilt block up from here. So what we're going to do next is assemble in vertical rows. So attach this one together, this together, this together. You want to do one or two at a time. Don't rush. You want to keep them in the right order. Use a consistent 1/4 inch seam. You don't want to waver between 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch, and your seams need to be consistent right across so that your placement is right when you come and bring it back together. So I'll bring these two to my sewing machine. I'm going to make my little seams, press really well, nice and flat, and I'll be back to lay them back out and do the next two. And here's our first two vertical rows. And now we'll continue on the same way with these rows. And our last strip. So you can see how we have all our vertical strips done. You see the pattern, how it works. I think it's really fun. So now as we assemble these, we have a little nesting to do. And because they're all vertical rows, instead of doing just one after the other, I'm going to do 3 and 3 and then put them together. So on this first one, we don't really have any nesting. We're just going to use our consistent 1/4 inch seams to put these together. So also this one, and then I'll be back to show you how to nest that one in case you've never done it before. But I think we've had a lot of practice in the group with nesting. My 1/4 inch seam is done and pressed flat. And now we're going to attach this third piece. But this is where you're going to need to nest. Where these colors match up, you need to nest that seam so you get a nice arrow shape there. So you want to be sure that you're nesting your seam, one to the left, one to the right, so it's nice and flat. You can actually feel that it's flat. I think most of you have been doing these blocks since the beginning and you're really familiar with how to nest your seams. So on this strip, there's only one. And you want to get it really nice and sharp so you get that point really clean. And there we go. You can see my little arrow. Perfectly nested, and that's what you want to do throughout. Wherever your colors meet, like here, you want to be careful to nest right there. And don't worry if you're a little off on the bottom. I cut my white strips by hand very fast, so I might be off a little bit. I'll just square it all up at the end. Okay, so now we're going to work on these 3. So once again, I'm going to nest these 2 colors. I see that both my seams are facing the same direction, so that's no problem. Just flip one over so that they're separate, going right and left. We'll just flip it over, and after I've sewn it in place, I will press it flat again. So just make sure your seam is nice and flat nested together. Here's our next 2, nicely nested. We see a nice point there, And we're going to attach this third one, and we need to nest these also. These dark blues, you want to nest them, or these two dark pieces at the bottom. Make sure they're nested so you keep your shape. I always put a pin in it just to hold it on my way to the sewing machine to make sure it doesn't move. We'll just line this up and we'll attach our third piece. And there is our right side, all done. See, my nesting is nice and straight. So important to keep the block looking really nice. So now we're just going to attach these two together to finish our block. So there's our point of nesting. We want to make sure we do that really well. If you have to flip your seam, flip it so that you're able to flatten it out and keep it nice and neat. So I'll get this last one done and I'll be back to show you the finished block. So here's our finished block. Of course, I have to trim up all the excess threads and square up my block. I hope you're going to enjoy this one. It's really fun and not difficult. It's easy to do. Just remember to lay out your vertical rows according to the diagram so you don't get mixed up and lose the shape. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you'd like to participate in this block of the month, check the description right under this video. You'll find a link to my Stitch It with Cricut Facebook group, and everything you need to participate can be found there. Thank you for watching.